Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to John Dudley Speaks. I'm your host, John Dudley, and welcome to season 2. Yeah, we're here. We're rolling through it. I'm not gonna waste time though. Let's get this show on the road. Welcome back. Welcome back to the pod. It's good to be back. We're gonna dive in, but first, since I have been gone for a few months, there's some things that I wanted to cover, gauntlet style. Just go through some news that happened in the last, I don't know, mainly month and a half, especially at Comic-Con and D23. Considering we are getting into something Star Wars related today, I just wanted to, kind of cover what Marvel's doing, Disney's doing, and all the other things in between. So, starting off with Marvel, Agatha All Along is coming later this month. We got another trailer for that. It looks fun. It looks like a fun time. I don't want to focus on that too much because we are going to eventually cover that on the Substack. But Fantastic Four, Matt Shakman's take on that looks like it's going to be pulling a lot from the WandaVision visual template. Looks really interesting. The leaked footage that we've gotten so far is, I think pretty cool. I know they're still in the midst of production on that, but I think it has potential to be one of the most interesting Marvel Studios properties in recent years, given the fact that we are kind of slipping back into a Marvel era that is more exciting. It would be nice to see them take a bold swing, not like a bold swing like Eternals, but have it actually click. And I think it works with them being outside of the 616 universe, so that'll be interesting. We also got Captain America: Brave New World, more footage on that. We also, I think we got like the actual high res look at Harrison Ford as Red Hulk. I'm all in on this. I think it's going to be solid. I don't think it's going to be the best Captain America movie. I don't think it's going to be the best MCU movie of this upcoming year, but I do think that given all the reshoots and all the problems surrounding some of the characters, from a political standpoint as well, I think that it could turn out to be a pretty sleek spy thriller. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We also got Thunderbolts asterisks. We have that at the end of it. I'm not sure what that. I think it is some kind of reference to Dark Avengers, but they don't want to give it away just yet. Thunderbolts looks great. I saw the leaked trailer on that. It looks great. Jake Schreier behind the camera from Beef, and you have also Lee Sung Jin on the writing side. Joanna Callow from The Bear is writing as well. I do think that them going from CGI and lots of green screen based sets to actual locations is a good sign. Like I said, Eternals was one of those things, where they did that same thing and it didn't pan out all that well. But I think that this is going to be a nice change of pace on the more grounded side of the MCU, make it actually look like a more grounded tone of a film. So looking forward to that. We also have Daredevil Born Again. Man, sometimes fans complaining really does work, because them doing an overhaul and changing this to basically just Daredevil season 4 was such a good idea. I really can't say anything else other than like the little sizzle reel that they played at D23, but it looks fantastic. Just Charlie Cox back into his his usual mode, but I think he'll be able to mine some growth and depth, especially with the show being away for about almost a decade now, and then having the core trio back, like with Foggy and Karen coming back, and then we're gonna get Bullseye back, and of course Wilson Fisk, because we saw that being teased in Echo. So all around, really good news surrounding this. And I think the fact that they have Dario from The Punisher at the head of the writing team as a showrunner, Aaron Benson and Justin Moorhead. Is it Justin Benson and Aaron? I always mix it up. Maybe it might be the other way around. they're the directors of Loki, the body horror directors at Loki season 2. They are going to be directing. So, yeah, this is everything that we hoped it would shape up to be. We also got Ironheart, and the footage looks okay. They're probably gonna dump it off all in one day. I'm not too impressed with it. Anthony Ramos is playing a villain. We're gonna get Mephisto in it for some reason, which doesn't seem right. But we'll see. It seems to be a Bob Chapek leftover from that era when Marvel was really being strangled by Disney to put out content. So they can't really do the whole Warner Brothers thing of like writing it off for a tax break and then canceling the show. And it would look bad, especially when it's a black protagonist, a black female protagonist. That really would be such a bad look. It was already a bad look for DC when they canceled Batgirl, so I think that would be just really too much. It would really blow up the internet, and I also am against that. I want to see what Dominique Thorne is able to bring to this role, given the fact that we've already seen her in it. I want to see more. I want to see how they tie this into the overall, grounded part of the MCU. But we can't talk about Marvel without talking about Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. We have Doctor Doom. It's been announced Robert Downey Jr. will be coming back to the MCU to not play Tony Stark or a variant of him, but to be Victor Von Doom. I have mixed feelings about this. I think everybody and their mother has commented on this online at this point, and I get it. It's strange. It's a really strange pick, and it's supposed to be, I think, some kind of callback to how Tony Stark was the linchpin of the Infinity Saga by bookending the multiverse saga and the Infinity Saga with Robert Downey Jr. For some reason, it seems like some kind of poetic reasoning for them to do that. I don't hate it. I think it could be very interesting. I don't hope for an Iron Man variant of Tony Stark that is Doom. I don't want that. I want them, if they're going to do Victor Von Doom, I want them to actually do Victor Von Doom. And I want him to find out, because he's such a complex villain, I want him to be pissed off that this guy, Tony Stark, in another universe, looks like him when he's so obsessed with his own perfection and, his own, blemishes or, the scars that he has. So, for him to find out he shares the face of someone that he diametrically is opposed to, even though they pretty much have the same worldview, just their execution of it is different. I think that would be really interesting. I think Downey Jr., he's an Oscar-winning actor now. He would be able to nail it. I have no doubt in that. I just hope he keeps the mask on for most of it, because it would defeat the purpose if he's taking the mask off over and over. You let him keep the mask on, let him keep the allure, let the voice push forward the mystique of the character, and then when he removes it, let it be a shock to the characters. We'll know it's Robert Downey Jr., but just kind of being on that ride and not knowing what the characters of the film do not know would be really interesting. So that's Marvel. Big announcements for D23. I think they're doing it right. They're finally announcing things in an orderly fashion that don't feel rushed. Obviously, I think Armor Wars is done. They probably canned it after Secret Invasion sucked so bad. Interesting stuff going on. Other things I'm going to cover before I get into the Acolyte. The Boys, we're going to get a bunch of spinoffs there. I think before The Boys Season 5, we're going to get Gen V Season 2. Looking forward to that, seeing how they follow up that big cliffhanger ending. Vought Rising is another thing that we're getting with Jensen Ackles and Aya Cash coming back as their respective characters of Soldier Boy and then Liberty. Liberty, Stormfront, however we want to call him. Either way, she's just a Nazi. Let's call a spade a spade. She's a Nazi. So we'll get to see her Nazi origins in Vought Rising. That would be interesting. I do want to see more of Jensen Ackles in this show, so that's exciting. And then The Boys Mexico. I don't know what to think about this. They're expanding in such a way that makes them feel like they are Vought. And Amazon is really pushing this as much as they can, so we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Other projects, Pixar, all the sequels. I mean, we're getting what Zootopia 2, I think, Incredibles 3, Toy Story 5. I don't know why we need a fifth one. They've ended it twice. I really don't understand. And then we have they have a new film called Hoppers, and the description of it sounds ridiculous. It's something about like gophers, I think. I don't know. I'm gonna have to. I'm giving bad information here, but yeah, Pixar's slate doesn't seem all that interesting. It's just very much sequel heavy. I think Disney's trying to rein people back in after certain streaming misfires that I think they're blaming for their own lack of ingenuity. But looking at Turning Red and Luca, those are great films. Soul, great film. They're all original. They're great insights into different aspects of how we carry ourselves through life, and they teach really good lessons to kids. And I don't think we need to keep going back to sequels to do that. And that point, it becomes a little bit more soulless. But I'll be watching. I'll be watching to see how they put that all together. We also have Tron Ares is something that's coming out soon. All of it looks great, except for the fact that Jared Leto is the lead. Yeah, we're getting Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross music, and makes sense because they're trying to follow up Daft Punk's amazing score from Tron Legacy. But I'm not sold on Jared Leto being a lead for this. I think he is incredibly overrated. I think he overacts, and I don't think he's that great of a guy. He's pretty weird, culty dude. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. I'm gonna watch it for sure because the visuals look very complex and interesting. And the only drawback for me is Jared Leto in the lead. I don't get it. I don't see what the casting directors see for that. Then before we get into like some Star Wars information, we got more news on Avatar 3, which is going to be titled Avatar Fire and Ash. I love it. We're going to get the fire people. We're gonna see some amazing effects. I think it's coming out next year, which is a pretty short turnaround time for James Cameron. So I'm impressed. I let Jim do his thing. He's going to do an amazing thing with this. So it'll be nominated for Best Picture again. I'm just looking at the concept art. It truly looks immaculate. He's gonna outdo himself from what he did with the water effects on Way of Water. So kind of shifting the elements there is very impressive. But yeah, last but not least on the news front, that I promise we'll get into the episode. Star Wars Skeleton Crew coming on December 3rd. Looking forward to it. It looks like the Goonies, but Star Wars. And, given the fact that the show that we're about to talk about has been canceled, Skeleton Crew might be the last thing that we see from an originality standpoint in Star Wars for a long time. So we should definitely like tune in, make sure that we're like giving it its due, because this is a show that's being pushed by John Watts of the Spider-Man Home trilogy, but it's featuring direction from Lee Isaac Chung, the director of Twisters and Minari. It's featuring direction from, I believe Bryce Dallas Howard is involved. She's pretty much like a staple for Lucasfilm right now. But what I think is awesome is the Oscar-winning directors, the Daniels from Everything Everywhere All at Once, will be directing an episode of this. So, yeah, like we gotta make sure we're actually tuning into this, because these stories only endure if they're given the space to, and then that leads to newer stories, and that's what allows for Star Wars to be so timeless. We can't just always be stuck in what worked before. And I think that's what leads to like the deep fake necromancy kind of stuff, where they're bringing characters back from the dead, that putting this kind of glossy face over it that just doesn't it doesn't hit the same as an actual new story being told. So I say that, and I think I think I'm gonna make myself a little bit like hypocritical here, but I am excited for the Mandalorian and Grogu and Ahsoka season 2. I'm excited to see how they bring this all together in the Thrawn narrative. But at the same time, I am struggling to see how Star Wars moves forward without diving back into Skywalker related things and just there's no clean slate or empty canvas that they're painting from anymore. It's kind of in between things that we know that happened. So that means there's limitations. It makes it a lot harder for us to expand and grow the characters and the settings and really the stakes of it all, because if we know it's kind of like Game of Thrones. If we know it's all leading to the Night King, how am I supposed to care about Daemon's vision and House of the Dragon? So those are some things on my mind, but getting into the coverage, so let's get into the Acolyte before they decide to wipe it from existence on Disney Plus. Comes from Leslie Headland, who was the showrunner of Russian Doll on Netflix. So you can put that in the context of the show that she made for Lucasfilm here. It kind of makes sense. In essence, Acolyte is an investigative drama that plays like a Rashomon, exploring multiple perspectives of the same settings and the stories and the characters surrounding them. Just a quick background on the major expositional notes. The Acolyte is set 100 years before the events of the prequel trilogy. So keep in mind, this is at the height of when the Jedi were basically independent of the Senate and the Galactic Republic. They're operating on their own. So they're essentially like space cops at this time. And it's something that we've never seen on screen before. We've seen it in video games and the text, but having it in live action is very interesting. Before I get into plot details spoiler alert, there will be full spoilers. I just want to make some quick positive notes as well as negative notes. The positives here: Lee Jung-jae in the lead, fantastic. I know that they were originally going to cast Keanu Reeves, but he took the role of Shadow for Sonic 3, which I think that's hilarious. But they got the Oscar winner, the Emmy winner, Lee Jung-jae from Squid Game to play the lead, and he actually learned English for this role, and I think he did an amazing job. Really grounded his character, even if they didn't write him as well as they could have. Manny Jacinto as the Stranger might be one of the best Star Wars villains in recent memory. Fairly memorable character. I know everybody's like always posting about the thirst trap of the Sith that is like the hot Sith, and I get it. He's a very attractive man, but like I think he brings a confidence and a bravado here that he's never done on screen before, and I really enjoyed that. Also, we got a lightsaber whip. I would have liked to see more of that. I know we saw like some whip scars on the back of Khmer's, like after he disrobed, he had some lightsaber whip scars. I think that is from Vernestra and her lightsaber whip. So I would have liked to see more of that in a season 2, and it's kind of sad that we're not going to get to pick up on that. Also, on top of that, the fight choreography in this show, fantastic. We got to see some wire work. We got to see Trinity, like Carrie Ann Moss, do some wire work again for the first time in years. So that was really cool. The fight choreography is very decadent and elaborate, deliberate, very much focused on making it look like frames that are filled with art rather than like constant motion. So there are moments where they implement the slow-mo to articulate a certain meaning behind one of the moves that one of these characters are doing, and I really enjoyed that a lot. The lightsaber destabilizing metal of Khmer's helmet was also really cool. Always headbutting lightsabers. I don't think we've ever seen anybody try to headbutt a lightsaber and live, so that was interesting. I want to see Star Wars dive into some more like quirky, weird concepts like that. Speaking of weird, the Space Witches, the witch convent where they're creating basically like Sith lords essentially, that was cool. It does get a little corny, I will say. I'll get into that in a little bit, but just the fact that that we're getting more into witches stuff, and like, Ahsoka dove into Witches of Dathomir. I think that's pretty, like, kooky and out there for the Star Wars fandom. That, even people like, my dad look at that. I'm sure they're like, oh, that's weird. I didn't know that there are witches in this. And it's like, yeah, like, my mom and I, when we were talking about Ahsoka with my dad, I remember we were just like, yeah, like, there's a whole other lore to this that is just extensive and strange. And I love that we're finally just getting to see that on screen outside of, like, animated shows. And speaking of animated shows, a lot of them have a light and funny tone, and stylistically, they're a little bit closer to the original trilogy in how they handle humor and things like that. And Basil and Pip being in this show really allowed for that to be something that we see again just in live action. So I felt like the tone of this show, it wasn't trying to do original trilogy like beats of the story, but it was trying to capture the essence of it. And I really liked that. There was a lot of funny moments that I really enjoyed, filled with glee, that I thought were, like, pretty astounding. And comparatively versus, things like Andor, it's not as bleak, it's not as rough around the edges. And not saying that this show is better than Andor, because Andor is, top tier Star Wars, but still, it's nice to see that Star Wars can sometimes still be fun. It doesn't have to be like an end all be all story. It can still be something that we all enjoy and go to. Like, when you look back at it, it's really like a family friendly film franchise of the original. So I like that they played back into that. As for negatives, Amandla Stenberg's performances as Osha and May are really boring. It's just really hard to watch her go through each scene because she's very dead-eyed, unfortunately. And I'm not gonna be that guy that's like, like hiring a woman, like a black woman in the lead. Oh my god, like, people, honestly, the people that are complaining about that are really not true Star Wars fans, because going back to the 70s, what do people think when Billy D. Williams was cast as Lando? Like, we've had people of color in Star Wars for decades. We've had leads that were women for decades. Princess Leia, Carrie Fisher, was a lead of those three movies. It's not like she was just off to the side and, only had a few scenes here and there and Luke Skywalker drove the movie. No, she was a co-lead with Harrison Ford and with Mark Hamill. Same as the prequels, you had Natalie Portman in a very big central role as well. So I just don't understand this new wing of the fandom. I call them new, and I don't even think they're part of the fandom. They're just constantly complaining about, casting people of color and women. And I get it. I do think Disney does virtue signal and try to, like, push, not an agenda. I don't want to say that, but I do think they try to appease before they even have a dialogue. So they think, oh, we're going to be accused of not being progressive enough. We're just going to be progressive preemptively. So it's done out of the wrong reasons, I think. And I think this time it wasn't. This time they wrote a character that was troubled, and a character that had a dark past, and they hired a woman for that. That woman happened to be a black woman. It's a completely new character too. So, like, there's no precedent that means that she has to be white too. So I just get really, not to go on a tangent about that, but I just get really irritated about Star Wars fans nitpicking stuff. Like, you want to see new things, but then when those new things include something new, like a female protagonist that is black, you kind of try to, hurt her and, take down her character, which I feel sad that she even had to post a statement about all the hate mail she's getting, because that's just sad. But to get back on track, I am not a fan of her performance, sadly. I think she's a great actress. I just don't think that the writing for her was interesting. It was razor thin. There was a lot of leaning on us to kind of fill in the blanks because of the Rashomon setup of the story, but like because of that, it gave her the space to try and emote and kind of allow us to read between the lines and translate her emotion, but it just did not click. I felt like she was playing the same character for both characters, and each one was just very boring. So I was disappointed with that. Especially because it's just a misuse of her talents. I think Amanda Stenberg, she's great in Bodies, and obviously in the Hunger Games movies too. So like, it's a shame because I feel like there's a lot more that she could give to this if the writing staff had actually pushed her to be a little bit more compelling and have like some bold swings, like you know actually diving into the trauma a little bit more instead of the surface level. And that'll get into another piece of this that I did not like, the low amount of episodes. This is such a small subset of episodes. It could have been a movie. This is the kind of show that needs at least 12 to 16 episodes to build this mystery and to make us interested and to have little subplots along the way to help us get to know these characters. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But other negatives, Carrie Ann Moss, vastly underrated. She's only in it for like 3 scenes. And yeah, it's kind of blink and you'll miss it cameo almost. I really wish that she was in it more, that there was a more effective way to weave her into this. And that plays into the longer episode times. We could have gotten flashback episodes, like multiple ones of just her, to understand why it was so important that killing Master Indara was like such an important sad thing. Also, there's some leaning on pre-existing lore and member berries that I really did not like. I did not like the Yoda reveal at the end. I felt like the conclusion of the show was haphazard and anticlimactic. And the Plagueis reveal was very tacked on. It just felt weird. It felt like it was building up to something instead of like. It felt like it was building to a season 2 that it's not going to get. And we're never going to get any kind of, resolution of this unless it's in. I'm thinking like it'll probably be resolved in some kind of canonized text or a comic, and that's just to me not as satisfying. But speaking of the conclusion, let's just dive further a little bit. I want to start with talking about episode 1 and 2. We have Lost and Found and Revenge and Justice. Yeah, I think that the show starts off great. The death of Master Indara and the fight scene between her and May is terrific. I really enjoyed the whole twin conundrum and the reveal there that both of them are, that they're twins. Obviously, the twin reveal that they're twins. Pretty easy, pretty easy to put together, John. But they could have done it earlier. I think them saving it for kind of like this end reveal of the episode is a little, I don't know. I feel like it's babying its audience a little bit. They gotta understand that the audience is a lot smarter than that. The audience will be able to put together that they're twins within 10 minutes. So like I feel like you get those major story beats out of the way so that we can maybe move on to things that, I don't know, make the characters tick, make the characters interesting, make them, I don't know, maybe somebody that we shouldn't be rooting for, but we're going to anyway. There's just, I feel like there was a lot of table setting here that didn't work. Also, there's a lot of mystery here with touches of wonder. So like having soul secrets and, having, the tone be a little bit more levitated and light. And then also introducing the stranger at the end of the episode too. Like I enjoyed that. I thought that Lost Found was a good introduction that could have been expanded more into like an hour-long setting if they had just done a little bit more character work. Revenge Justice. I don't understand why they couldn't. I'm gonna keep on going back to this. Why they couldn't extend this season a little bit more to help us get to know Jeckie and Yord. Because second episode, we're already on another planet. Osha's part of this new ragtag team. Maybe get one conversation with Yord, one conversation with Jeckie. How am I supposed to care about these characters? There's nothing being given to me as a viewer that's saying that these are protagonists. All I'm getting is Osha and Soul. They're important. Everybody else is kind of an accessory to prop up their stories, and I really did not like how flat that was. I also didn't like how obvious the twist was that Kamir, like, they pretty much telecast to you that Kamir is the stranger. Again, this is another problem where I think that they don't trust their audience enough. So they're just kind of telecasting all of their moves before they happen. So it makes it, like, really hard to enjoy what's going on as it's happening, because you can really predictably just say, well, oh, so he's obviously the bad guy. So yeah, the whole killing a Jedi without a weapon thing, it would have been a little bit more interesting if they weren't like just being too obvious. But I did like the yin and yang over Torben. I thought that was something that was really cool, like to see how Osha and May view this situation. And it's a nice little character vignette that we get in this in this episode that it calls back to the title, Revenge and Justice. What exactly do these twins want at the end of the day when it comes to the people that are responsible for what we eventually find out that they did? I wish they weren't so mum about what they did, and that leads into Destiny, episode 3. Why was this the third episode of the show? I do not get it. This should have been the cold open to the show. This should have opened it up. We should have seen the big event happen, and then we see the fallout, and then maybe we do a flashback later that shows the different perspective, so that we're armed with all of the information as viewers. Instead, we're getting this information now, but it would have been so much more like apparent to us what was going on, like what these motivations were for each character if this was a cold open to the show. I did not like the placement of this. It's a good episode overall, but like, gosh, it just really, I wish they moved it. Kogonada directs this episode, and he's the director of After Yang, one of my favorite films of 2021, with Colin Farrell, and they do get to let him. They do let him play in the atmosphere a lot in this episode. It's just the aesthetics here. I blame Disney for this. It's $200 million. Why does this look like a set? Why does it look cheap? That really bugged me upon watching this, and then watching it again, just kind of refresh myself for the podcast. It's just the whole Brendok sets look very poorly made, and the director does a great job in pushing the atmosphere to keep us invested, but it's really distracting upon rewatch. Also, the power of many chant, a little much. It's kind of corny, but it's offset. Like I said, the whole suspense of what happens, and even though the child actors are pretty bad, I do think that like the suspense of what happens in that moment, and the apex point for them as kids and their trauma, like being all pulled from that day, I think that was really interesting from a storytelling perspective. So I really enjoyed that. And the space witch is pretty cool. I really like the similarities to the Dathomir lore, and I want to see how they. Unfortunately, we're not going to see that, but I would have loved to see how they tie that into the Witches of Dathomir. further down the line in the timeline. So we'll see. We'll see like if they can actually do something like that. I'd really like that. But next, I want to talk about episode 4 through 6, Day, Night, and Teach and Corrupt. Day and Night should not have been split like this. It's just really weird. The clunkiness of it. So television, to me, you look at Lost. Obviously you could argue the last couple of seasons of Lost it fell off, but you look at that first season. Every episode, you have an A plot, a B plot, and a C plot. Each one, when it comes to their characters, you look at the story circle of those characters. The character goes through a journey, and they have some kind of, inciting moment in the plot that brings them to where they are in the middle of that plot, and then they have to make some kind of action that maybe changes their perspective, and then they land where they're at, having, turned into a new person. And that's how you wrap up a full episode. Like, none of these episodes do that. There's no focus on it. It feels like a cut together 2-hour movie. And this is coming from someone that likes what they're doing here, but I can't help but look at this and be like, Day as an episode is, as an episode of television, it's terrible. As a scene, like a group of scenes in a film, it's excellent. So, like, I really think that this is a problem with Disney Plus and overall with Lucasfilm, too. Like, with how they're trying to dice together their projects so that they're easily digestible and bingeable upon rewatch. I don't like it. I think that this should have been a movie if they're just going to be this thin about the story. I think that the shift in motivations was really convenient for May. It really felt like for the plot, we have to shift her motivations. I think when Kelnaka was found dead, they should have leaned a little bit more into the macabre elements, a little bit more into the horror tinge that they need. That would have been so much more interesting. And I think what really saved this episode for me, because this is, I think, the worst episode of the season, Day is saved by the very end when Stranger shows up. And I love the line from Soul, "What are you?" Not "who are you?" Not like what's going on, but what are you? I think that was like a really good, like, reference to the idea of like this evil has been gone for a long time. These Siths have been extinct, so I was really excited about that. And that leads right into Night, which I think is one of the best works of Star Wars here in terms of fight choreography, in terms of like tone setting. I really think this all should have been one big episode. The nameless Jedi that are getting killed off, am I supposed to care? Like, I don't care. But the choreo is amazing. The fighting and just the sword fighting that they must have done for like practicing this in rehearsal must have been so much fun because it looked great. And that's in spite of the really weak production design. But like in spite of that, we got Kamir revealing himself. No way, it's Kamir. Obviously, we knew that, but I really like what they did here. It made us kind of ask these questions: Is he Tenebris? Is he Plagueis? Like, who is he? It was really it did a great job of like sparking our interest. It reminded me of us like trying to figure out who's Snoke. So yeah, this one I had a lot of fun with. The fight scene between Soul and Kamir was great. The way he kills Jeki was brutal. The way he kills Yord was brutal. And we need more villains like this in Star Wars that are just uncompromising and that are just kind of mean. And I really liked that about him. I thought the switch at the end of the twins was really dumb. When she cuts off her hair, it's just like, what, did you smell something burning in the ship? it took me out of it. I kept laughing. I'm just like, that's so stupid. I did not like that. But yeah, the whole thing on teach and corrupt, because that leads right back into the next episode. If not for Basil and Pip, I think this episode would have like been a lot more boring. Because they do hit the themes of the yin and yang of Soul and Khmer pretty hard. They go really on the nose on it, and that's another instance of them not trusting the audience. And I do not think this is Leslie Headland's fault. I think this is very much a Disney problem where they don't trust their audience is going to pick up on nuance, so they kind of jam it down our throat in a way that is a little unflattering and just not fully like it isn't fully indicative of what a story is supposed to look like and sound like. So if not for Basil and Pip doing some like little like fun things here and there, this episode would have been a non-starter for me. And eventually we get to the whole thing where Soul like realizes that it's her, so it's May on the ship, so he's gonna tell her the truth. And then also we have Mr. Thirst Trap Sip, Manny Jacinto, doing his bathing thing. I don't know if that was necessary, but it was interesting. I think it was funny how they added a little bit of sexual tension between Osha and him, but because Amandla Stenberg is so flat, we really didn't get to see what that looks like. Even though he was giving his energy, she really wasn't giving it back. So it was strange. It was a strange episode, which leads into the Rashomon, like the other side of the coin, which is choice. Again, why is this the 7th episode here? It could have been on the tail end of episode 6. We could have like gotten glimpses of it earlier on. It baffles me that we basically get the same episode just from a different perspective when this could have been like in a different episode, different perspectives, but we get the narration, we get the story, we get him telling her what happened. I did not really care for how they told this story, but at the same time, the episode itself is great. Kokonada does a great job on his direction style here, and getting to see the other pieces like Soul killing May and Osha's mother, and I thought that was like done pretty well, like showing off the moral gray area of the Jedi and how far they'll go to cover up themselves and to stand by their own understanding and to defend their own beliefs, basically. So I really enjoyed that. I thought the Star Wars like fights here were very inventive. Like Kelnaka versus Soul is excellent. The whole witches possessing Kelnaka was awesome. We need more stuff like this. We need more camp stuff in Star Wars like this. But overall, like it should have just been placed somewhere different. Like it just didn't hit as well for being a penultimate episode because it slowed the momentum of the current story. But obviously, the Acolyte, the final episode of the series, that double fight between Osha and May and Soul and Khmer, that is top tier stuff. It would have hit a lot better if the story of the show was paced out better, if we had longer episodes, if we had a longer episode count. I could see this thing being like peak Star Wars, but it doesn't hit that way. It is still great. I really enjoyed both fights. It had a bit of a OG trilogy spirit to it. Showing the swap in ideals, revealing basically who these characters were all along. Showing that May is the more compassionate one, and that Osha is the more rebellious and vengeful one. And the bleeding of the Kyber crystals was something that we've never seen in live action, and we got to see that. So I think this show needs to be a lot more appreciated for taking swings like that. I just wish we got to see more of that, and Disney didn't really neuter this show like it did, because we didn't need the member berries at the end. We didn't need Yoda. We didn't need Plagueis. We just needed a fully rounded story that concluded in a natural way, and I just really don't think that we got that. So obviously, season 2, guess not. It's not happening, which is unfortunate. I would have really liked to see a season 2 of this show. I think it has flaws, obviously, because I've gone into like half an hour of the flaws of the show, but like overall, it's it's something that we haven't seen on the Star Wars side in a long time, which is just boldness. We haven't seen big risks being taken, new stories being told, new themes that are just basically saying that anybody can be special. We haven't seen that in a while. And the last time we did was The Last Jedi. And I kind of missed that. I missed that boundary pushing, effort from Lucasfilm, and it's just sad that we're not going to continue to get that. I'm hoping Skeleton Crew can tap into that a little bit more, but it's a weird time to be a Star Wars fan because it's very much Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau taking over, which I do not have a problem with. I love the Rebel stuff that they do, but when it comes to telling newer stories that we've never heard of, it's going to be really hard after this and after its viewership being so low to really sell Star Wars fans on diving into a new interpretation of the canon. So my conclusion, I think it's a bold step for Lucasfilm. It's declarative in how different it is from the usual Disney Plus shows. And while it does have shortcomings in like narrative development and even its production value, I think it's just made up with like really solid acting that centrally grounds the show from Lee Jung-jae and Manny Jacinto. And the tone is very consistent, and there's such an excellently composed score that wraps all of it up. So in the end, we have something that is just a wondrously inventive look into how Star Wars action and drama and soapiness of that drama can be. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on the Acolyte. There you have it. So, that's all I got today. Not to get too into the weeds, but yeah, it was a fun show. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed looking at back at like the canon in a different way. I'm hoping Star Wars can dive into some newer pastures after this, and that they don't get discouraged. So, yeah, we'll see what happens next up. But moving forward, I do want to give some recommendations before we hang up. Let's see. I have some recommendations right in front of me. Oh, Alien Romulus. Just watched that in the theater. Fantastic. Best alien film since Aliens. It's truly magnetic. And it has one of the best, I think, visually shot scenes of the entire year. It's like right on par for me with Dune Part 2 and how it handles this very particular scene. Yeah, really enjoyed it. Highly recommend. Another thing that I've been watching Mr. and Mrs. Smith with Donald Glover and Maya Erskine. I'm plugging along very slowly with it because I don't want it to end because it's so good. I'm 5 episodes in of the. I think it's a 10 episode season, maybe 8. It might be 8. Really enjoyed it. It's so funny and quirky, and has a little touch of the Donald Glover weird that we've been accustomed to with Atlanta and Swarm. So yeah, like his writing on it is great. Francesca Sloane's writing is great, but I really think Donald's acting is stellar. I get why he got the Emmy nomination for this because he's just perfect. And on top of that, yeah, like really nothing else that I've been getting into too much. I mean, currently I was watching Love is Blind a little bit while ago. Love is Blind UK. It was great. The reunion was fun, but the Love Island USA season 6 reunion episode, that is some trashiness, and I love it. It's so great. Another recommendation, when my wife does join the podcast eventually, because we're going to talk about The Boys in a little bit, because she did a binge of The Boys all 4 seasons. So when she hops on the pod, she'll probably recommend this recommendation too. But Gossip Girl, I highly recommend. It is addicting. I think it actually is. It's not a bad show. It's definitely not a good one. It would not be in my top 50 of the 2000s. And, there's a lot of bad and mediocre shows in the 2000s that probably would hit that top 50 over it. But it's so addicting. And I think Chuck Bass is basically Batman. I decided I'm going to do a video on it. I'm going to do a video next year when we finally finish Gossip Girl about why Chuck Bass is basically Batman. Stay tuned for that. And stay tuned for some things that I got coming up. I got a Drake ranking coming up, Big Sean new album review coming up as well. Keep your eyes peeled for basically like a retroactive look at the legacy of Kid Cudi's Man on the Moon, his original like first studio album. We're celebrating 15 years of it this month, so I wanted to do something to celebrate that, and just it is to me still the best album of 2009, and just talking about its influence after all these years, it was really fun. So check that out on Substack. But yeah, outside of that, not much going on, just chilling, and excited to get back into the podcast. So I'll see you soon. This has been John Dudley Speaks. I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye-bye.